Welcome to the HIT Podcast, HIT, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. As we do every week, we are dropping into your feed with what I hope are bite-sized, digestible, really well-curated conversations going on in the space. This week's episode will be no exception. This week's episode is a continuation. We ran a little long in our conversation with Lauren Sweeney, so we're breaking this into 2 episodes. If you missed part 1, go back and catch that. Lots of amazing information. Part 2, we're going to pick up right where we left off. This week's episode is brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions, and without any further ado, we pick up where we left off with Lauren.
And remembering people support what they themselves create.
If
you need buy-in, how do we then come to the table with a problem solution and then get buy-in on it?
Yeah, you just remind me of 2 expressions. The one that just came up on the end of that is where there's weigh-in, there's buy-in sometimes, right? And then the other thing is, what gets measured gets improved, right? And so when you're talking about like, if your problem is amorphous, well, like you said, let's detail it, let's name it, let's categorize it, and then from there you can kind of measure and improve it. This is all super fascinating stuff. Sticking, I think, with the kind of the soft complaints. Do you think that are they on the rise? Is there something that an HR person can do to get out in front of this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like they are on the rise, but in a good way. Employees feel that they can be more vocal. That's good. And this is partially, what comes with it. I think employees too, they care. We're in a post-COVID work world where people did realize that they could maybe voice more things. We came out of an era where, like, what are your company values? What do you really stand for? And those are all good, positive things.
Yeah.
I think that you can get ahead of it because it goes back to your workplace culture. For example, how many times do we hear that HR gives out an employee engagement survey and then there's not buy-in from the rest of the executive team, and so nothing gets done about it? Well, we lose trust. And so those kinds of things that eroded our trust, if we can work to rebuild trust, then employees can feel like they can come to you, but they can also solve some of these problems themselves and not just complain about it. It also goes back to the intentionality and what are our company values? Not just like what's on the wall in the employee break room, but what are your real values? How do you measure them? And how successful are we? And what does raising the bar really look like in the organization? Otherwise, are we just kind of spending our time being satisfied down here? What type of leader are you? Are we creating transformation? What does that look like?
How do you ascertain a realistic answer to what are our values? Right, like you said, I'm not asking what you wrote in the break room. I'm asking what's really going on. Well, how do you ascertain that?
I mean, the exercise that I like to do is to have our leadership team, our executive team, could be all of the staff, weigh in on that. So have them first list what they believe our values are as a company, and then pool them together so that we could see where there's some shared lines. Because it's the organization is not as I say it is; it's as the employees say it is,
Sure.
or our customers say it is,
Yeah.
and the experience on the other side. So if we can see where there's some overlap, and then talk about how do we define these, and then what I like to encourage is quarterly review them. So if you and I have shared values of, let's say, empathy, communication, and energy and collaboration, then we go, okay, once a quarter, we sit down and we go, all right, 1 through 10. What do you think? How are we doing on energy? Oh, 10 out of 10. I mean, we bring the energy. Let's go.
Yeah,
okay, how are we doing on collaboration? And if you can do it either with a neutral facilitator, that's something that we do at our organization, or do it through some type of like Mentimeter or survey in real time, you want to see the differentiation. So if 90% of the company says, no, collaboration, we're like a 2. And then there's just about 10% that says we're closer to a 10. Then you can see, okay, what's the gap like? It's more important that we're accurate in our self-assessment than it is what our self-assessment really is.
Yeah, you definitely, all facts are friendly, right? We're not trying to be rosy about this. How often would you recommend a company evaluates their values to with the intent on changing them?
At least once a year.
Once a year, you change your values?
I wouldn't say that I would change them. Yeah, second half of your question, with the intent on changing them. I think it's maintenance. So if you have them currently, at first there's like calibration of them initially, right? I would say once a year we touch them, we review them, we put them in the flesh, we touch them and pay attention to them. And I don't know that they necessarily need changing. They might
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But as long as we have them, they're defined and we categorize them, we put life in them every year, ideally even once a quarter,
Mm.
so that you can make sure, okay, how are we living them? The other way that you can do that, though, is by these conversations. So when
Hmm.
somebody comes to you and has this sort of soft complaint, you can say, hey, I hear you, Paul. I hear what you're saying. And one of our values really is communication and collaboration. Is there any reason why you couldn't talk with your boss, Samantha,
Hmm.
in with the intention of communication and collaboration? Okay, Lauren. So if you can reinforce them
Yeah.
in the day to day, then there really isn't a need to change them unless it's needed. I don't know that there's a need for that, but to touch them.
What do you think is the right vehicle or venue for a big annual touch? Is it its own meeting? Is it done at an all staff? Is it done at the company anniversary or the Christmas party? Like, what's the right way to touch your values on an annual basis?
Definitely with the executive team. I mean, that is important because the people are around the leaders every day, all day. They're intentionally or unintentionally setting the culture of the organization at an offsite. It does need to be location has memory. It
Yeah.
matters that we're away from the day to day. That does matter. And then from there, cascading them down to an all staff company Christmas party. People are there to, have a jolly time or something like that. So I don't know that that's always, we're not going to be critically thinking usually, especially
Yeah.
if people are drinking or something.
Yeah.
Uh, but at an all staff, perhaps in the spring. So a lot of organizations we work with, there's an exec offsite, usually maybe in December or November, kind of categorize the year if you run on a regular calendar year. And then towards the spring, we're then meeting all staff with our employees. It also, though, should be in our hiring, in our interview questions. It should be in our performance reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it's really embedded in the culture, then it's something that we're actually talking about all the time and not just fancy fun on a billboard.
And, we've talked a little bit about like soft stuff, and maybe this falls into soft stuff. Can you make the business case for why would you do this?
Yeah. So let's look at metrics. I mean, you can look at Gallup, right, from Harvard Business Review. You have plenty of statistics. I don't have the book in front of me, but it's the manager, which is by Gallup, is fantastic for HR statistics. Talks about employee retention rates. So it talks about the flip side, turnover rates. It talks about engagement. The percentage of employees that are disengaged and quietly quitting and the cost of that.
Yeah.
So there is a huge business case for it just on those X factors alone.
Yeah. 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 And I'm familiar with that. I just wanted to punctuate it and give you a chance to
Yeah.
do that as well, because I think that,
Yeah.
I'll sometimes make the argument on this show. It almost doesn't matter if you're doing it for the fluffy, squishy reasons, or literally you're just a cold-hearted business person that purely cares about the bottom line. Like, that's fine. Well, either way, whether you're doing this for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, I encourage you to do some of this stuff because it does translate, right? And I think that, like, it might be difficult always to quantify, right? What is the turnover or the customer retention rate changing because of this stuff? But you kind of, like, maybe without going to the doctor to do the lab work, when you spent 2 or 3 or 4 months eating right, taking your supplements and working out, the labs are gonna translate.
Yeah, and I would argue that most people are somewhere in the middle. Most people
Sure.
are not just like totally cold-hearted or totally overly empathetic. Most of us, we want to do right, and even in a nonprofit, we're running a business. We have to
I
stay
say that all the
afloat.
time. I go, nonprofit is a tax status. That is not a business model, guys. Like, come on.
Exactly. I work with tons of nonprofits in
Yeah.
our organization, and they're even, a profit for good company is what
Sure.
a
Yeah.
lot
I
of
mean,
people
look,
like
you got
to
to keep the
say.
lights on. You want to give employees raises. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, the whole thing. But the employee experience does matter. And we talk about this too. It's empathy with expectations.
Yeah.
Another great mentor of mine, coined that because it's not, oh, great, do whatever you want. I'm empathetic. No, we do need guardrails. We do need benchmarks. We do have stakeholders, whether they're our board or they're our investors or they're the owner, depending upon the setup of the organization. We need something that's functional.
Yeah.
We're not just building a Disneyland, and even Disneyland, of course, needs to make money. So
Yeah, well, listen, I think Disneyland's making plenty of money, so they don't need any support as an organization. But when do you feel like an organization might need some support?
yeah, good question. Olympic athletes or really great athletes of all kinds always have a coach. And yet in the professional world, it doesn't always translate. And I'm not just talking about therapy, good therapy is amazing, but an actual consultant or professional development coach or program. I really feel like for us as executives, we always need to be growing and learning, Carol
Yeah,
Dweck's mindset, right? Growth
yeah,
mindset.
yeah.
So for an organization, if you have it, it's hard to see the label when we're in the jar. And so we may
Agree.
think that we're just amazing, but uh, there's a lot of things I'm sure that the organization's doing correctly and some things that we could grow in. And it's hard to do that inside of being in it. So I would recommend that every organization, at least once a year, it could be every 5 years, has some sort of consultant. We do that at Riviera Group.
Yep.
But whether you have a one-on-one coach for yourself as an executive, or you bring in a consultant to kind of look strategically at the
Yeah.
organization, or whatever type of methodology you use, it is important because there's this great thing. Our tagline is compounded change. But if you think about it, money grows compounded interest. We
Uh-huh.
know that's principle, but we don't apply that for our professional development.
Right.
You could grow just 1% a week individually and as an
Mm-hmm.
organization. 1%. I'm not changing, dump everything out, change all
Mm-hmm.
your systems. That's not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Compounded growth shows, my husband's a mathematician,
Uh-huh.
he did the math on it. You will actually change as an individual organization over 70% in a year.
Yeah, when I was in college, I played soccer at LMU, and our coaches ended up putting 15 onto everyone's training sleeve, regardless of your number. And the idea was they wanted to remind us 15 minutes a day. Just go work on whatever your position is. If you need extra strength training or extra whatever, if you just did 15 minutes a day, that's some equivalent of small, and it stacks and it stacks. And all of a sudden, by the end of the year, you can strike a ball with both feet or whatever it is, right? Whatever you were working on, you're like, hey, my left foot came a long way because I just pinged it against the wall for 15 minutes a day all year long, type of a thing. Yeah, no, it's real. It translates. I think I went to the LMU side because you mentioned Olympic athletes having coaches, and then you're talking about how we don't do that in business very often or often enough. And I completely concur. If folks want to get a hold of you, and we can add a lower third here, but what's a good website or email, or just find you on LinkedIn or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely all over LinkedIn. Lauren Sweeney with Riviera Group Consulting. They also, of course, can go to our website, RivieraGroupConsulting.com, or I'm Lauren at RivieraGroupConsulting.com. Love to connect, talk more about this topic, nerd out on all things professional development.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys for joining us. That's all the time we have for you today. Thank you to our sponsors, keeping the lights on, Rula, Excel Health, TrueHue, Montage Insurance Solutions. Join us next week. Join us every week. Until next week, make this the best week yet.